Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Strong Stoic Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Tumblin, and exercise has been a very important part of my personal life. In fact, when I was young, I was very heavily into sports, and I also found my way into strength training at a pretty young age, which has become really a lifelong passion of mine, hence the Strong Stoic Podcast. It's also very well known now that, of course, there's numerous benefits to exercise. Physically, for your physical health, but also psychologically, also from a mental health standpoint. But what do the Stoics say about exercise? Sure, I exercise, and I'm something of a Stoic, I suppose. I'm an aspiring Stoic, but is exercise something that all Stoics should do? Before I get into the topic, I must announce that this podcast is part of the Walled Garden Podcast Network, a curation of podcasts by basically contributors of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society, which I was invited to join. I'm there as a director, philosopher, mentor, contributor, because I align so much with their mission, and I love the people that are working there. We're all coming together to pursue truth, wisdom, and virtue, and the divine, wherever they are to be found, which, in my opinion, is just about everywhere. If you'd like to find out more, consider checking out thewalledgarden.com. I recently just did my event on Dostoevsky. So eventually that will be released into the podcast, which will be free, not my podcast, but the Walled Garden podcast. But if you want access to all those live events, consider joining the Walled Garden, becoming a member on there. Also, consider checking out my Patreon. I appreciate all supporters on there. Consider checking out Telegram, where you can get involved into a group chat, and my blog posts are on Medium and the Stoic Gym. I also have a correction that I need to make, and that is on a recent episode I talked about Malala Yousafzai, and I actually read about her in a little book called The Virtues, A Very Short Introduction, which is an amazing, about 100-page book, one of the best books I've ever read on virtues, and it's amazing. It sums it up. Check that out if you're interested. But anyways, I learned about Malala through that, and the book wasn't really clear, or maybe I missed something, but I had understood, or I had assumed, that she actually died from being shot on the bus, and actually she survived, and she wrote her own biography and everything. So it doesn't take away from the lessons of that podcast episode, but I was recording that with the assumption that she actually passed away and died from that. I mean, the book I read said she got shot in the head, so I thought the chances of survival were pretty slim. But anyways, I just wanted to make that correction. The lessons in that are still valid, but in terms of, the fact of the situation, she actually did survive. So good for her. I mean, that's heartwarming. And now I have another book to read, her biography. Anyways, moving on to the topic at hand. I want to talk a little bit about, briefly, just the benefits of physical exercise. I mean, I'm a strength coach, right, and an athlete, and I've spent a lot of time researching and thinking about this. But very briefly, like, human beings are meant to move. We're actually built for endurance running, interestingly enough. We're not really built for the gym per se, but throughout human history, up until very recently, we've been in constant motion. We've always been running and moving and hunting and fishing and foraging. We've always been moving. And this is important physiologically because there are systems in your body, particularly in your immune system, actually, that don't work well without muscle contractions. You have this lymph system which works through muscle contraction. So unless you're moving, those systems don't actually work properly. So our whole physiology is built on the presupposition that we are going to be moving quite a bit. So movement is very important from a physical standpoint. However, even though the physical benefits of exercise are very well known, well documented in terms of health and also how you feel, it's actually not the most beneficial aspect of exercise, in my humble opinion. The most important benefit of physical exercise, it's actually mental fortitude. Now, this might sound like complete nonsense to those who don't exercise, because I know some people who don't exercise, and they kind of get this idea that physical exercise is just this physical task that you have to get through, and it is, but it's actually more of a mental challenge than anything else. So let's talk about mental fortitude and what it means. What's often misunderstood is that fortitude is actually a Stoic cardinal virtue. It's courage. Remember that a lot of the terms that we use in English today, they've been translated just so many times that really they've lost their initial meaning. And the only way for us to determine their true meaning, a lot of times after we've translated, is through context. So we add context, we add more words to explain the concept itself. And through doing that, we were able to gain a deeper understanding of what they actually meant by the word courage. Now, the cardinal virtue of courage it's better understood as courage and fortitude. Now, fortitude, that word, the definition is something like difficult to overcome. Right? That's fortitude. In other words, strength. It's very similar to strength, which you could say, or as I define as, the ability to resist. Resist what? Well, resist everything. Resist temptation, to persevere, to resist hardship, adversity, to resist a load. That's what strength is all about. And because life is, you find meaning in life through adopting responsibility, strength allows you to adopt more responsibility because it allows you to resist more, to carry more load, and that's where meaning is found. So this is why strength is so fundamentally important to who I am, and it's a virtue for me. And it's also a virtue to the Stoics. I mean, even though I've placed strong in my podcast title, the Strong Stoic Podcast, it's actually a Stoic virtue anyway, so I don't really need to mention it, but it holds a deeper meaning for me, and I emphasize it quite a bit more. And that's really what the Stoics meant by the word of courage. The virtue of courage is courage, fortitude, and strength. It's something like that. So we have the ability to resist, or being difficult to overcome. That is the character trait that the Stoics value. Fortitude, strength, and courage. That's all under what we commonly just call courage. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean physical health, though it often did in ancient times. I mean, consider the historical context of Marcus Aurelius, where he's in a war the whole time, right? And the other Stoics as well, but Marcus Aurelius kind of stands out because he was the emperor, so he was really, the head of the war. And so there's just violence everywhere, and there's battlefields everywhere. And so courage was often used referencing the battlefield. So physical prowess was important. As a Stoic, remember that virtue is the only good, and virtue is derived from character, though it's really an action. It's a habit. It's a character trait it's an action that you do over and over and over again until it becomes a habit. That's what a virtue is. So when you talk about things like courage and fortitude and strength, it's really just a habit that you've gotten into. Now, mental fortitude is really what the Stoics meant, but without physical fortitude, the mental fortitude didn't really mean much on the battlefield. And so you have to consider the context of some of these words. Today, things have changed a little bit for the better. I mean, there's still huge benefits to being physically active and to being physically strong. However, it's not as much as it used to be. Now, pretty much when we think about fortitude and strength, it's really from a mental standpoint. But I just want to make it clear that even in the ancient days, the Stoics would think of strength as more of the mental strength, the mental fortitude, but that a lot of times that had to go hand in hand with physical prowess because of the context, the historical context of being in war pretty much the whole time. Now, the obvious question now is, well, if the Stoics really meant mental fortitude, then why the hell should we exercise, right? And it's a fair question. I mean, if they meant mental fortitude, why would we even consider working on our physical fortitude? Now, what I have found personally is that physical exercise is the best way to develop mental fortitude. Now, this gets back to what I said earlier. Exercise is to train your mind first, not necessarily your body. Like, I go to the gym and I exercise, and I do it to make myself physically stronger. But the more you do it, the more you start to realize, I mean, I've been doing it now for 14 years, something like that. And in also with a lot of other sports as well. So it wasn't just strength training, but I've been doing it for like 14 years now. And one of the things you find is that it does become more of a mental thing as you develop further. I mean, you can always get physically stronger, but the mental battle, that is something that that ultimately, that's why I do it now. So exercise is to train your mind first and your body second. Now, part of what Stoicism is fighting bodily desires. That's moderation, that's temperance. We fight gluttony and overconsumption, which is really what gluttony is, right? Consuming too much. We fight sexual urges when we know that they are not virtuous. We also fight laziness or sloth, which is a vice. I had a full episode on not being a sloth. Your body naturally doesn't want to do much work. Okay, it wants to conserve energy for survival. However, that desire, sloth, it's a vice. Therefore, a large part of developing mental fortitude is really telling your body who is boss. Want a piece of cake? No, this isn't my cheat day. I'll have a piece of cake on Friday. Want to give in to sexual temptation, which I know won't make me happy? No, that's not virtuous. I'm not going to do that. Want to stay on the couch and watch TV? No, I'm dedicated to daily exercise. Who's in charge? You or your body? Is your body your enemy, though? Because you think about that. Well, who's in charge, me or my body? Well, personally, when I'm in the gym and I don't want to work out, I'm getting tired, I'll actually openly assert sometimes something like, we're done when I say we're done. Or I may say, no, I'm not listening to you. Now, you may think that I'm crazy, and newsflash, I am a little crazy. But this is actually a very common thing for athletes to do. They might not say it out loud, but they'll certainly think it. Like, no, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving into this. We're done when I say we're done. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep going. But that's weird because, like, who the hell are you talking to? Who the hell are you talking to when you say we're done when I say we're done when you're in the gym by yourself? Because you're talking to yourself, yet you're being rebellious towards yourself at the same time. Isn't that interesting? The best way that I've thought of conceptualizing this, it's like talking to your weaker self. We're all filled with the capacity for good and evil, right? We're all filled with the capacity for virtue and vice. So if fortitude, if courage, if strength is a virtue, then lack of courage, lack of fortitude, and lack of strength is a vice. If dedicating yourself to a training schedule and being disciplined about it, and going even when you don't want to go, is a virtue, then staying on the couch, then quitting halfway through your workout is a vice. There's a battle going on inside your head at all times. The virtuous person who wants to flourish and do the damn work, and the vicious person who wants to be lazy and do nothing. So when you say that, we're done when I say we're done, or something like that, what you're really saying is the virtuous part of me is going to beat the vicious part of me. Or I'm not going to feed my vicious self. It's reminding yourself, both sides, the virtuous self and the vicious self, that the virtuous one is in charge. And sometimes saying that out loud, it's highly beneficial because you're embodying that spirit. Likewise, if you're tired in the middle of a workout and your vicious self is winning, you'll say, I'm just too tired. I can't do this. I need more sleep. I'm too tired. And what is that? Well, that's you embodying the vicious self. Now, as an athlete and a coach, I will say that your body does need a break sometimes. Overtraining is a very real thing. However, with that little caveat in place, most of the structures that people have mentally are just that. Mental. It's in your head. It's a battle between your stronger self and your weaker self. Another thing I'll often ask myself to basically call myself out on my own bullshit is, can you really not do this, or do you just not want to? It's like running. Like when you run, there's this little voice in the back of your head telling you to stop. Stop, 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 stop. You're getting tired. Oh, my legs hurt. My feet hurt. Stop. I'm going to cramp up soon. I've already got 5 kilometers in. Why won't you just stop? Now, that's your body. That's your vicious self telling you that you should stop. Now, here's what's always fascinated me. Your body can keep going. Your body will keep going if you make it. It's amazing what the physical body is actually capable of. It's not a matter of your legs just stopping to work. No, they can keep going. In other words, it's only in your head. You can keep going. You are just choosing not to when you give in to that temptation. And that is a vice, allowing your weaker self to manifest itself. Finally, let's get back to the question that I asked. Do Stoics exercise? I would say overwhelmingly yes. And it's not because exercise is the only way to gain fortitude. But it does seem to be the best way for a lot of people because it's so visceral. It's so real. You can feel it in your body. It's as real as it can get. You can be a Stoic and not exercise. It's possible. But the road to becoming more Stoic is so facilitated by exercise that I think it would be foolish to not recommend it to everyone that is capable of it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Please consider leaving a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. If you're new here, episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Check me out on Instagram, Twitter, all the social medias, YouTubes. Not going to bug you anymore. Thanks again. Cheers. Until next time.